Brittney Pitts, and today I'm going to talk to you guys about Monsanto. Now, you might be asking yourselves, what is Monsanto? According to Wikipedia, Monsanto is an American multinational chemical and agricultural biotechnology corporation. So what's biotechnology? Well, according to Green Facts, modern biotechnology, developed during the past 30 years, makes changes to the hereditary material of a living organism by a technique called genetic engineering, or genetic modification. To expand on that, Green Facts says that the technique of removing, modifying, or adding genes to a DNA molecule is genetic engineering in order to change the information it contains. By changing this information, genetic engineering changes the type or amount of proteins an organism is capable of producing, thus enabling it to make new substances or perform new functions. Now, these days, Monsanto is well known for their pesticide Roundup Ready and their genetically modified crops, but in the past, they created Agent Orange, which was an herbicide used in warfare in Vietnam, and aspartame, which is fake sugar, as well as the bovine growth hormone. Bovine growth hormone and aspartame are actually known to be cancer-causing chemicals. So I believe it's my claim that genetically modified organisms are inherently harmful, and here's why. My first claim is that Monsanto's pesticides are toxic to the environment. My second is that Monsanto's genetically modified crops have monopolized the agricultural market. My third is that Monsanto's pesticides are toxic to human health. And last, genetically engineered plants cause environmental issues. So moving on to my first claim, which is that Monsanto's pesticides are toxic to the environment, the Union of Concerned Scientists says that genetically engineered plants have been engineered to produce and resist the pesticide Roundup Ready. As a result of that, Union of Concerned Scientists adds that millions of acres of farmland in the U.S. are infested by the pesticide-resistant weeds caused by the overuse of the pesticide Roundup. The Union of Concerned Scientists then goes on to add that parasites, such as the corn rootworm, have become resistant to the pesticides that some corn varieties have been engineered to produce. So what do the farmers do? The pesticides that they're using on their crops are no longer working. Well, the Union of Concerned Scientists says that to fight back against these pesticide-resistant weeds and parasites, farmers are turning to older and more toxic herbicides, such as 2,4-D and dicamba. So how does Monsanto respond? Responsibly, of course, as the Union of Concerned Scientists says, because they created new genetically engineered crops to tolerate these older herbicides regardless of the possibility of history repeating itself. On their website, Monsanto states that their vision for sustainable agriculture is to protect and preserve this planet that we all call home. If that was the case, why would they repeat their huge environmental mistakes in the first place? My second claim is that Monsanto's genetically modified crops have monopolized the agricultural market. So what's a monopoly? According to the Library of Economics and Liberty, a monopoly is an enterprise that is the only seller of a good or service. So why is that bad? Leonard E. Reed says that a monopoly is bad because it uses coercive force to keep others from competing effectively and also from challenging one's position. Tommy Caldwell of Vice demonstrates this by saying that Monsanto dominates the market for seeds and thus controls the price. He then goes on to say that Monsanto sues farmers who save seeds for future crop yields for breach of contract. Tommy Caldwell then adds that seeds can't reproduce after their first growth, forcing farmers to buy the seeds over and over again. And finally, Tommy Caldwell makes a major point that Monsanto also dominates all major subsidized foods in North America. So farmers receive savings on Monsanto brand products when they want a break on the cost of food production. According to Leonard E. Reed, monopolies don't have to be bad. There could be a good monopoly and a bad monopoly. And he says the bad form of monopoly is virtually impossible, assuming free exchange. In brief, monopoly in its popular and evil sense cannot be achieved, except as coercive force, private or governmental, is employed on its behalf. And Morgan Korn of the Daily Ticker seems to agree that Monsanto indeed does indeed possess private and governmental force, because Michael Taylor, the former vice president of the public policy at Monsanto, was named deputy commissioner for foods and veterinary medicine at the FDA. Monsanto has spent over $70 million in lobbying since 1998 and $10 million in campaign contributions in the past decade. So moving on to my next point, which is that Monsanto's pesticides are toxic to human health. Jeffrey Smith of the Organic Consumers Association points out that children have developed life-threatening allergies to peanuts and other foods as a result of introduced genes in genetically engineered crops. He adds that foreign genes that have been inserted into GM plant DNA come from species of bacteria and viruses that have never been in the human food supply before. How genetic engineering most commonly works is they take proteins from a virus or a bacteria and they extract it and they insert it into the gene of the organism that they're modifying. Jeffrey Smith then goes on to add that the Bt gene that makes GMOs resistant to pests has been shown to cause organ damage, infant mortality, reproductive problems, and disease and sickness. My third point is that genetically engineered plants cause environmental issues. According to the Union of Concerned Scientists, engineered genes cause a genetically engineered crop to become invasive or toxic to wildlife. Science and Society adds on by saying that concerns of gene flow from GMO plants to non-GMO plants, which would result in the replacement of non-GMO plants with GMO plants in nature. The scientific community fears that GMO plants can't survive in nature because of the genetically modified condition. Science and Society goes on to add that biodiversity is greatly reduced because fields are planted with seeds that are genetically identical, which makes crop species vulnerable to invasion by insects, fungus, and other threats. Monsanto tells us that they're here to create a sustainable form of our agriculture that would result in the benefit of human health and the environment. But as I've shown you, Monsanto has done nothing but create problems for both human health, the environment, and the consumer market. So next time you go to the supermarket, I ask that you all carefully choose the vegetables that you're going to purchase before you buy them. Okay, that's it. Thank you. You can tell, right? My voice shook. Should we not sleep?
Yeah. All right, well, you've identified the topic clearly. You've got some definitions. I'm not sure that you need quite as much of the definitional material as you provide. It's a good introduction, but it does take up a lot of time, and apparently time is an issue for you because you are in a hurry to get through the presentation the whole time. You've got a lot of information you're trying to cover, and you're rushing the whole time you're speaking. So I think you need to do a little bit of editing on some of those choices. I thought there was a very clear statement of what the proposition was. There was an excellent layout of what the secondary points were going to be. Again, they go by quickly. People who are paying close attention will get it, and they'll hear them as they come up. You did signpost clearly in the body of the speech, so that's not a problem. It's easy to follow the structure, and as long as people are focused and giving you the attention that you need, you're going to be okay. I do think you need to adapt a little bit to the audience, and part of the problem there is that you've got it crammed with a lot of information, and you may need to do some editing. There are probably a few things, for instance, that could be taken out almost immediately. The four claims that you have supporting your point, those are all okay. A couple of examples of things that probably should have been taken out. All of the ad hominem argument about Monsanto and Agent Orange, aspartame, and all that's got nothing to do with your particular claim. That's an attempt to poison the well against Monsanto. That doesn't really do you any good. So I would stick to the arguments about the genetically modified crops and whether or not they are dangerous or whether they're creating a particular problem. You have to do a lot of explaining about what a monopoly is. I think that kind of gets off the track, and I think you would be better off focusing on the health consequences instead of the monopolistic practices of Monsanto, or do the speech on the monopolistic practices of Monsanto and kind of pick which battle you're going to be fighting in this presentation. Like I said, it just feels like you're trying to do too much in the one speech. You do a very good job citing evidence in the presentation. There is a lot of quoted material, and we're assuming that the sources that you're citing are experts. A couple of them are qualified pretty well. The Union of Concerned Scientists is an advocacy group, and so almost everything that came from that source is opinion evidence, and we need to have some examples and illustrations or some statistical information to back up those things, and that seemed to be the weak part of the argument. I got lots of opinion about the products that Monsanto's coming up with, but I didn't really have anything other than the expertise. So if I'm willing to rely on your experts, I'm okay. But if I had any doubt just like you are trying to plant doubt in the minds of the audience about Monsanto and their opinions, there is plenty of reason to maybe have doubt about these people who are opponents. If there was a reason to have doubt about those folks, then that's where all of your evidence comes from, and that, I think, is a little bit narrow. The proof on the claim on allergies, I think, is a little problematic because although it identifies allergies as the main issue that you're talking about there, almost all of the information that you cite under that has to do with other issues that are not really the allergies. And I didn't hear anything that was particular to the peanut allergies, which you're citing, and the Monsanto treatments that are going on there. So I thought you got a little bit sidetracked there. I did mention the presentation issue. It sounds like you're rushing a little bit. And because you're reading so fast, you've got the script up in your face, and that's a little distracting. So I think you want to practice a little bit more, cut down on what you're trying to do. I'm not asking people to memorize all of their information in quotes. I don't think that's, I don't know how they do it in the other class, more power to them. But that seems a little bit tough to me. But I do think that you need to be able to speak to us a little bit more, and that's a bit of a problem. On your exit line, you mentioned vegetables, and I'm trying to think, well, which vegetables are we talking about? Because it didn't sound like it was really vegetables, so you're talking about something mostly like it was grains. Okay, thank you.